General Hospital spoiler reveal that Pascal moved across the cold, mist-covered cliffs of Spoon Island with the relentless precision of a man who knew he was running out of time. His breath sharp and uneven as he scanned every shadow for a trace of Anna. The storm rolling in from the water matched the storm raging inside him. The growing fear that Anna was no longer alone. Rumors had already reached him, broken whispers carried by the wind through the servants' quarters, and abandoned tunnels that Valentin had found her, that he had somehow slipped past the guards and infiltrated the island's defenses to help her escape. It was the one variable Pascal had not accounted for, the one ghost from the past capable of dismantling everything he had built. As Pascal pushed deeper into the forested path leading toward the old stone villa, he felt the quiet shift in the air, the sense of invisible eyes watching, waiting. He knew what that meant. Anna was no longer prey, she was preparing to strike, and Valentin's presence elevated the threat to something personal, something dangerously unpredictable. Pascal realized that if the two of them combined forces, he wouldn't simply lose control of the situation, he might not survive it. Inside the dimly lit villa, Anna crouched beside the cracked window, her muscles coiled like steel, every sound outside tightening the knot in her stomach. She could sense Pascal approaching long before she saw him. Her nerves were still raw from days of surveillance, interrogation, and isolation. Escaping Pascal's grasp once had taken everything she had left, and she knew he wouldn't allow her a second chance. But now she wasn't alone. The faint sound of footsteps behind her signaled Valentin returning from checking the back corridor. When their eyes met, there was no need for words. Their past complicated, painful, intimate, compressed into a single unspoken agreement. They would not let Pascal take either of them alive. Valentin had been shot at, hunted, betrayed, but nothing compared to the fury he felt now. Seeing Anna locked away, bruised, and fighting to breathe had triggered an instinct older than reason. He would protect her at any cost, even if it meant facing Pascal alone. But Pascal had no intention of letting a reunion weaken his grip. As he broke through the villa's entrance with cold determination, he didn't see fear in Anna's eyes, he saw resolve, the kind that frightened him far more than any weapon. She was not the woman he had cornered days earlier. She had fire again. She had purpose again. And worst of all, she had Valentin. The confrontation ignited instantly, violent and chaotic. Valentin lunged with the force of a man who had already accepted death as a possible outcome, tackling Pascal to the ground. Furniture splintered around them, the echo of bodies hitting stone reverberating through the villa. Anna seized her chance, diving for the gun Pascal had lost in the scuffle. But Pascal's reflexes were faster than she expected. He slammed Valentin into the wall, disoriented him, and lunged for Anna's wrist. Their bodies collided with such force that the gun discharged into the ceiling, raining dust over the three of them as they fought for control. Valentin staggered toward them, driven by instinct, but Pascal twisted with terrifying precision and redirected the angle of the weapon. In one split second, illuminated only by the flicker of lightning outside, the world shifted. A second gunshot ripped through the room, this time aimed not above them, but straight through Valentin's chest. The sound was deafening. Time seemed to stretch into a long, suffocating silence as Valentin's body jerked back, the red bloom spreading across his shirt with terrifying speed. Anna screamed a raw, agonized sound that seemed to tear the air apart as she lunged to catch him before he collapsed onto the cracked tile floor. Valentin's eyes, once sharp and burning with determination, dimmed as he struggled to breathe. His fingers curled weakly around Anna's hand, as if trying to anchor himself to her one last time. Pascal froze, shock flickering across his face. He had not intended to kill Valentin. A wounded Valentin was a weapon he could control. A dead Valentin was a disaster that would ignite consequences he couldn't outrun. Anna's grief transformed into something darker, more lethal. She pressed her hand against Valentin's wound, desperate to stop the bleeding, her eyes burning with a fury Pascal had never seen. The woman he had tormented, hunted, and underestimated was gone. In her place stood a storm, violent, merciless, unyielding. Valentin whispered something Anna couldn't fully hear, his voice fading like smoke. She held him closer, refusing to accept what was happening, her mind fracturing between heartbreak and rage. Pascal realized too late that by pulling the trigger, he had unleashed a force far beyond anything he could contain. He stepped back, stumbling over broken glass, suddenly aware that Anna was no longer a prisoner. She was a weapon forged by her own grief, and he had just sharpened the blade. Outside, thunder cracked across the sky, the storm closing over the island like a shroud. Pascal tried to retreat, but Anna rose slowly from the floor, her hands stained with Valentin's blood, her breathing steadying into something terrifyingly calm. Only someone who had loved deeply could look like that after a loss. Only someone who had endured trauma after trauma could become that dangerous when pushed too far. Pascal felt her gaze slice through him, cold and precise. He knew the rules had changed. He was no longer the hunter. He was the target. Every corridor of the villa, every shadowed hallway, every hidden path across the island had suddenly become a battlefield he no longer controlled. Pascal's pulse raced as he stumbled back through the doorway, fighting the rising panic clawing at his chest. He had wanted Anna neutralized. He had wanted control restored. But now, he had something far worse on his hands, a grieving Anna with nothing left to lose and a dead Valentin whose blood would cling to Pascal for the rest of his life. As the rain began to hammer against the roof, Pascal realized the truth he had been avoiding. Anna was coming for him, not in desperation, not in fear, but in vengeance, cold, methodical, and inevitable. And on an island like Spoon, where escape routes were limited and the storm growing stronger by the minute, Pascal understood with chilling clarity that his fate had already been sealed. The moment he pulled the trigger, if Valentin truly died on the cold, cracked floor of that abandoned villa, then the moment Anna's trembling hands slipped from his lifeless body, marked the birth of a new version of her, one forged not by duty or justice, but by devastation, calculation, and a kind of cold burning vengeance she had never allowed herself to feel before. When she finally staggered out of that decaying house, blood soaking her palms and rain streaming across her face, Anna was no longer a fugitive struggling for survival on Spoon Island. She had become something far more dangerous, a woman with nothing left to lose, and no reason to restrain the darkness now rising inside her. The instant she drew a breath free from the suffocating walls, she knew the truth with absolute clarity. She would escape this island. She would bury the grief threatening to consume her, and then she would return not for justice, not for truth, but for retribution. The deaths, the lies, the manipulation, the games that Pascal and Sidwell had orchestrated would no longer haunt her. They would be answered, and answered in blood. As Anna moved silently through the storm-drenched forest, every broken branch, every distant splash of waves against the rocks only sharpened her focus. She walked with the precision of someone who had been twisted into a weapon against her will. She replayed the gunshot again and again, tormenting herself with the sound of Valentin collapsing, the shock in his eyes, the desperate curl of his fingers around hers as if trying to anchor himself to life. That memory, to raw, to violent, to sacred, morphed rapidly into fuel, igniting a rage that strengthened her resolve until it felt as though the storm around her had grown merely to mirror the storm inside her. If she had failed to save the man who had once saved her, then she would not fail in the one thing left she could still control: revenge. Even as the wind lashed against her body and visibility dropped to almost nothing, Anna navigated the secret tunnels and forgotten paths of Spoon Island by memory, moving like a ghost through spaces she had once investigated, defended, and infiltrated. Every plan she had before escape, survival, alerting the authorities fell away. There was only one plan now: dismantling Pascal and Sidwell piece by piece, stripping away their alliances, exposing their crimes, and ensuring that the suffering they inflicted on Valentin would return to them 100-fold. Her mind calculated without mercy, imagining every scenario, every angle of attack, every weakness she could exploit. This was not strategy born from her training as an agent. This was instinct born from heartbreak. By the time she reached the hidden boat dock on the far side of the island, Anna's grief had hardened into a terrifying, icy stillness. She moved quickly, quietly, dragging the small emergency raft toward the water and launching herself into the tide. Before any of Pascal's remaining men could track her, the sea was brutal, the storm unrelenting, but Anna clung to the raft with a calm fierceness that bordered on unnatural. She kept her gaze fixed on the distant coastline, imagining every step she would take once she reached land. She would not tell anyone she had escaped. She would not reveal Valentin's death. She would disappear long enough to gather strength, resources, and the element of surprise. Because when she returned, she wanted Pascal and Sidwell to feel safe, if only so she could rip that safety away from them. Hours later, after clawing her way onto the mainland shore, Anna collapsed in the wet sand. Body trembling, breath shallow. Not from fear, not from weakness, but from restraint. Because every instinct inside her screamed to return immediately and finish what Pascal had started. But she forced herself to wait. Revenge delivered in haste left room for mistakes. Revenge delivered with precision was devastating, and Anna intended devastation. When dawn finally broke, pale and colorless across the horizon, Anna's transformation was complete. She was no longer the hunted. She was the hunter. The world believed she was either missing or dead, and she let them believe it. It granted her a luxury she had never used before: invisibility. She slipped through safe houses, activated old contacts, and broke into systems she had once sworn to protect. She traced Sidwell's offshore accounts, Pascal's encrypted communications, and every dirty tie connecting them to the network that had brought death to Spoon Island. Her fingertips trembled not from fear, but from anticipation. Names appeared, locations surfaced, patterns emerged, and the deeper she dug, the more she realized Pascal had not acted alone, and Sidwell had not merely been a doctor, he had been an architect of suffering, quietly shaping events from the shadows, playing with lives as if they were disposable pieces in his own cruelty-driven puzzle. Anna's rage sharpened into something almost serene. She knew now that killing Pascal would not be enough. She needed to dismantle everything he built. She needed to burn Sidwell's empire to ashes, and she would, without hesitation. Her obsession grew with each passing hour. Sleep became irrelevant. Food became irrelevant. Grief transformed into purpose, and purpose morphed into obsession. When she finally stood before a large map, marked with the movements of Pascal's men and Sidwell's operations, Anna felt something dangerous stir inside her, a sense of destiny. A quiet whisper that told her she was finally becoming what the world always feared she might become. At the center of the map, she placed her red mark over Spoon Island, pressing the ink into the paper with enough force to tear it slightly. That was where everything had ended, and that was where everything would begin again. She imagined Pascal's face when he realized she was alive. She imagined Sidwell's quiet panic when every contingency he had relied upon suddenly collapsed. She imagined the moment when both men finally understood that they had not created a prisoner. They had created a monster of their own making. Anna stepped back from the table, the fire of vengeance illuminating every inch of her expression. She whispered Valentin's name into the darkness, not as a plea, but as a promise. She would not let his death fade into another forgotten tragedy. She would not let the island swallow the truth. She would not let Pascal or Sidwell walk freely while Valentin's blood stained the floor, where he had fallen trying to save her. Her plan was simple, brutal, and inevitable. She would hunt Pascal first. She wanted him to know fear. She wanted him to breathe it, taste it, drown in it the same way she had drowned in grief. Once he broke, once she destroyed everything he relied on, she would go after Sidwell, the mastermind who believed himself untouchable, the man who had manipulated, threatened, and pushed her past the point of no return. Anna picked up Valentin's ring, the only thing she had taken from the island, and slid it onto a chain around her neck. It rested against her heart like a weight, a reminder, a vow. Then she stepped into the morning light, her silhouette sharp against the rising sun, and prepared herself for the war that was coming. Because now, there was nothing left to lose, and nothing more dangerous than Anna with a purpose. Sidwell had always operated from the shadows, a man who preferred pulling strings rather than exposing himself to danger, a strategist who believed contingency plans were more valuable than loyalty. So when news reached him that Pascal had failed to contain Anna on Spoon Island, and worse, that Valentin was dead, Sidwell knew the time had come to activate a safeguard he had hoped he wouldn't need. His mind processed the information with cold efficiency, recognizing that the moment Pascal let his emotions interfere, the entire operation had ruptured. Pascal was no longer an asset. He was a liability, a dangerous, unstable liability with too many answers and too little discipline. Sidwell didn't hesitate. He didn't agonize or second-guess. That was not his nature. Instead, he calmly opened a secure communication line, issued a 3-word command that sealed Pascal's fate, and leaned back in his chair as the weight of inevitability settled in. If Pascal breathed another hour, it would not be because Sidwell had spared him, it would be because Sidwell's men hadn't reached him yet. Pascal, meanwhile, had no idea that the man he believed was his partner had already turned him into the next target. He staggered through the dim corridors of the underground hideout beneath Spoon Island, cursing himself, cursing Anna, cursing the storm that blinded him and the bleeding cut across his forehead, where Valentin had struck him. He replayed the gunshot in his mind, the moment he pulled the trigger, the shock on Anna's face, the horror that had consumed her. But he was too focused on survival to realize that he wasn't outrunning Anna anymore. He was outrunning Sidwell, and Sidwell was far more merciless than Anna could ever be. On the other side of the island, Anna emerged from the shoreline like a specter risen from the underworld, driven not by rage alone, but by a single-minded clarity that terrified even her. She had escaped Spoon Island, but she carried the island with her every shadow, every scream. Every drop of Valentin's blood crystallized into fuel for the vengeance burning inside her. The moment she reached the mainland, she felt it. A shift, a disturbance, something in the air that told her things were changing faster than she anticipated. She could sense that the path ahead wasn't moving in one direction, it was branching, twisting, reshaping with new threats she hadn't yet accounted for. Pascal's death was a possibility she understood. But Sidwell killing Pascal, that was a different story. It meant Sidwell was adapting, tightening control, erasing evidence. It meant he wasn't afraid of losing Pascal. He was afraid of Anna. Anna's obsession sharpened. It wasn't just the desire for revenge. It was the fear that Pascal's death would rob her of answers, of closure, of the chance to make him face her before the end. It was the fear that Sidwell would bury every truth under layers of corpses and secrets, until she was chasing ghosts. And she couldn't allow that. Not when Valentin's blood still clung to her skin like a poison she couldn't wash away. Sidwell monitored operations from a distant location, surrounded by monitors tracking movement across Spoon Island and the mainland. When one of his men confirmed Pascal had been found and eliminated, Sidwell felt nothing, no guilt, no hesitation, no victory, only calculation. Pascal's usefulness had expired. Eliminating him wasn't betrayal, it was strategy, necessary strategy. And now the path was clear for Sidwell to enact the rest of his plan. He knew Anna would not run. He knew she would not hide. She was a woman forged by loss and sharpened by grief, and she would continue hunting him with or without Pascal. That made her predictable, and predictability was something Sidwell could manipulate. But Sidwell underestimated one thing: grief twists predictability into obsession. And obsession twists obsession into something feral, something unstoppable. As soon as Anna learned Pascal was dead, something inside her cracked a new knot out of sorrow for Pascal. But for the truth Sidwell had stolen from her. Pascal's death didn't ease her pain. It intensified it. It made everything personal in a way she hadn't expected. Pascal's death was supposed to be hers to control, hers to deliver, hers to mark as the moment justice was reclaimed for Valentin. Sidwell stealing that moment from her was not relief, it was theft. And the theft ignited a new kind of fury that consumed her from the inside out. Anna envisioned Sidwell not as the mastermind he believed himself to be, but as a coward hiding behind money, intelligence, and hired men. She imagined him smirking in some secure compound, convinced he held the advantage. That image poisoned her every thought. And she realized something that set her heart thundering. Sidwell didn't kill Pascal out of efficiency, he killed him out of fear. Fear of exposure, fear of losing control, fear of her. That knowledge gave Anna strength. Sidwell's miscalculation was simple. By killing Pascal, he had removed the distraction, removed the noise, removed the lesser enemy standing between them. Now there was no confusion, no misdirection, no triangulation. There was only one target left: Sidwell. And Anna would hunt him with a vengeance so complete that she no longer cared who she had to tear apart to reach him. Sidwell, however, was preparing for her. He began consolidating his operations, pulling assets from across continents, shutting down digital trails, relocating safe houses. He treated Anna like a storm he could calculate, something he could anticipate and neutralize with enough preparation. But what Sidwell didn't understand was that Anna was no longer a storm. She was a force with no weather pattern, no predictable center, no calm. She was chaos with purpose. She was grief with direction. And she was coming for him. Harder, faster, more ruthlessly than he had ever imagined. As the night settled over Port Charles and the storm around Spoon Island began to break, Anna stood overlooking the water, the weight of Valentin's ring resting heavily against her chest. Pascal was gone. Sidwell had erased him. But Sidwell had also signed his own fate. Anna whispered Valentin's name, not as mourning but as oath. She would dismantle Sidwell's empire. She would expose every experiment, every lie, every manipulation he had ever conducted. She would make him watch everything he built crumble. And when he finally broke, when the fear he instilled in others finally came for him, she would be there to finish what Pascal's death had stolen from her. With Pascal gone, the game had changed. Sidwell thought he had secured his secrets. In truth, he had unleashed a predator with nothing left to lose. And Anna, driven by obsession and sharpened by grief, was now hunting the most dangerous prey of all, the man who believed he could control her. He would learn the truth soon enough. No one controls Anna. And now that Valentin was gone, nothing could save Sidwell from the storm she was about to unleash.